we've had over the past years. Um, in 2019, we began our planning process with the Eaglecrest board. We've been talking about summer operations prior to that, had a whole host of meetings. The mayor was gracious enough to create the Eaglecrest Summer Operations Task Force as an interface between the Eaglecrest board and the assembly to help us drill into all the details of summer operations and the nuances of different business models and the struggles of finding financing to move Eaglecrest into a more year-round operating scenario. So through that process, we've now had 6 task force meetings to date. List of assembly members there that have participated in this, and the Eaglecrest board and staff held 7 public meetings prior to COVID when we were back out in the community, meeting with people face to face, the good old days that we hope we're getting back to now. We also had over 11 different board meetings on the topic. So a total of 24 meetings that we've had talking about summer operations and this sort of development. Bear with me, folks. I'm just figuring out how to scroll on my new computer. So the big question, why does it seem like I'm just hearing about this? So as I mentioned, we were working with the task force and then the pandemic hit. And for good reason, the assembly was very occupied with navigating the community through the COVID pandemic and have done just a fantastic job. So we've just re-engaged with the task force back in August. During that gap period, the board continued working on a lot of this planning, reevaluating our original plans, and always having our eye out for the right type of ski lift, whether it be a new lift and staying in communication with the primary lift manufacturers or looking for used equipment that might fit our situation. So as we know, these used lifts come up seldomly, especially ones that fit our purpose. And so as I stayed engaged with a sales representative brokering lifts from the European market, which there's a lot of gondolas in Europe. They were really big fans of gondolas. And they're typically have a longer length and a higher vertical rise than other used lifts that come available for resale in the United States. So this came up on the market. It was a great opportunity, and it seemed to really fit the style of Eaglecrest. And we'll talk a little bit about what this style of gondola looks like. So I started pounding the pavement and looking for some support, and Wade Bryson saw this opportunity as a great way to affordably kickstart our aspirations to get into summer operations, and was gracious enough to work with city attorney and bring forward a funding ordinance that's now been working its way through the assembly process on a very fast timeline. We've been going at it a little over a month now, and looking forward to talking to you guys about what this process looks like going forward. So that's why this came out quickly. This gondola is currently operating right now in Austria and is scheduled to be removed, and the decommission is scheduled to begin here in April. So that's coming up on us really quick. Okay, so jumping on here, I want to talk a little bit about the Eaglecrest sustainability and resiliency. This is kind of the big things that are driving our desire to be active all year long. We're really looking to protect our winter operations against the impacts of climate change. And huge thanks to the assembly. They've really supported us with great funding for all the snowmaking expansion that we've done over the past couple of years. And that's really helped our situation. And so we see this kind of launching off into summer operations being the next portion of our adaptation and being resilient to the effects of climate change. Because as we know, we can only make snow if it's cold enough to do so. So we also want to develop that durable, sustainable year-round revenue stream that's going to be capable of creating ongoing funding so we can continue to repair and replace our existing aging infrastructure. And we'll talk some more about some of those key components here in a minute. We also want to continue to support our competitive wages and recruitment and retention for our staff. As many of you are probably aware, we were able to do a nice first increase to the wage plan this year, large in part thanks to all the success and all the support we've had from the community. We'd also like to be able to reduce the amount of general fund support needed to cover the increasing costs of operations. As we know, there's always increasing demand on the city for funding various social programs and community services that we all enjoy. And we feel if we have an opportunity to be more self-sustaining on our own, we should be taking these opportunities. So the real quick snapshot of our current trajectory. As we know, the snowfall that we're getting really drives revenue and leads into our financial trajectory. So this chart here, kind of great snapshot for all of those longtime skiers that are on the line. I know it's many of you remembering back to those big snow years, 2013, 14, you could see led to great revenue. And then we had some warm years and you could see those dips in revenue. We've got a little asterisk there in the year 2020. You can see we were on a great trajectory. That was the year that we had to close early because of COVID. And then last year was a good year for us. Revenues were on the increase, great snow. Obviously, people felt safe being here, recreating outside. And we were thrilled to be able to provide a physical and mental outlet for everybody as they navigated through life in the pandemic. And then you could see into 2022, currently on track for possibly one of our complete record revenue season this year. So that's thanks to everyone's support. So we want to keep this going so we can continue doing more programming and serving our people better and continuing to support our staff. Kind of a big one I wanted to touch on here is the current market for new ski lifts. So I'm sure all of our passionate skiers out there, we've all seen those pictures on Facebook of our other ski resorts in the lower 48 with huge overcrowding. That's led to unprecedented demand for new ski lifts. So we're currently looking at a 2 or 3 year backlog for brand new ski lifts if we wanted to order a brand new ski lift right now. And prices have jumped up by roughly 25%. So used gondolas, especially used gondolas with a mid station, and we'll talk more about that, but that's kind of a really key component that we see to our resiliency for climate change. They're really rare, especially ones that have enough length that could fit what we want to do at Eaglecrest. So we have a horizon we can see out in the future as ski resorts are ordering new lifts. We have a good view of what's coming available on the market. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to try to unpause my screen share. Thanks for the pause, folks. I'm dealing with our good old technology stuff. My screen kind of froze up on me there. So as I was saying, we know what lifts are coming available out of the European market a couple of years out, and we don't see any other gondolas coming up that have the ability to fit our needs so perfectly as this one. So that creates this opportunity and has given us that sense of urgency. So as we're talking about the next steps we're envisioning our sustainability for Eaglecrest is this purchase of this Pulse gondola. So we've got a couple pictures on the screen here. As you can see, the Pulse gondola is different than your typical gondola. It's easy for people to hear the words, oh, Eaglecrest is getting a gondola. And for us to have this natural image in our mind of this big flashy lift that can move 3,000 people an hour and has a lot of hoopla around it. This lift is really unique. As you can see, its current configuration, it travels with 6 pods of 2 cabins. Talking with our engineers, I actually had a meeting with an engineering company that could do our redesign. We could reconfigure so we'd have 4 pods of these 3 cabins. And these cabins are large. We've got 15 passengers per cabin that can fit. So when we're traveling with those 3 cabins together, we're going to be moving 45 people at one time. So really similar capacity to what you'd have at the Alyeska Tram or at the Mount Roberts Tram, just configured in a slightly different way. Total ride time on this gondola is going to be about 6.5 to 7 minutes ride time from the base to the top of the ridge line. So a little Google Earth image here. Where we're at in our design, we're still evaluating the best lift alignment. So what we're looking at on the screen here is 3 different potential lift alignments that we're looking at. The preferred alignment that we've done more research into is this alignment that would start right at the base of Hooter, come up the creek drainage with a midway station right on the Raven runout, real close to the Beacon Park Practice Center. And then coming up the edge of Raven, up the side of Best of the West to the ridge line, real close to the top of Heavenly. Our other alignment would land it kind of right midway along the ridge, top of Parkhurst. And the other one that we've been looking at is connectivity to the top of High Point. So the big factors here that will ultimately lead us to the final alignment decision, should this be able to move forward, is really listening to the engineers and looking at our soils analysis or geotechnical data. But we know the factors that we want to achieve. And that is, we want to give people, our summer visitors, a ride to the top of the ridge so they can enjoy those views of Admiralty Island, Stevens Passage, Seymour Canal, have easy access to the ridge top hiking trails. And we also love the idea of the mid station. As you can see, I've got some little pods highlighted, and Parker's alignment would also have that mid station potential in the same zone that would allow us to have some great alternative access to higher elevation Nordic skiing in this Nordic ski pod around Cropley Lake. And the other thing that I really love about the geometry of this terrain is it would give us the great potential to bring back the old tubing park. We still have all the equipment in the old tubes. And this would be a really fun way to get Juneauites that aren't skiers and snowboarders, give them a reason to come up to the mountain. An affordable ticket, they can come, you don't need any skill, and snow tubing can be really fun, especially when you have a big, long run out zone like we have here, as opposed to the other excitement that was in the old tubing park with the parking lot right at the end of the old tubing hill. We also see potential for some great hiking trails up to Cropley Lake, a little summer pavilion. Also shown on this map, the blue trails are some of the mountain bike trails that we had our company Gravity Logic, when they did analysis, drew out some of these potential mountain bike trails that could go along with summer operations. The other main attraction that usually anchors ski areas that have really successful summer operations is a mountain coaster ride. So there's 3 different styles of mountain coasters. One of them, you can actually use the gondola to carry the mountain coaster carts back up to the top. So Sunkid is the company that has that style. They've done this design for us. So this would kind of represent that mountain coaster starting at the midway station. Really, really fun experience, and lets us expand our offerings. And with the 2 core components of a mountain coaster and a gondola, with our hiking trails and some mountain biking trails integrating in, and the ability to build in some other low capital cost activities, we really have your classic summer adventure park experience that'll be really fun for our local kids, but also be really appealing for our summer visitors and give them a wide array of activities to do while they're at Eaglecrest. This shows you a little more up close of what these carts look like. This is a gravity powered cart. This style is really close to the ground. And some people like the ride experience being closer to the ground than some of the other mountain coaster designs. The rider controls the speed. You can go up to 40 kilometers an hour in speed on these mountain coasters. So like I said, really popular part of summer activities at a lot of mountain resorts that are in the summer operations space. So wanted to talk about what we have in our funding ordinance right now is a $2 million funding ordinance that contemplates those funds being used to purchase the gondola, ship it here to Eaglecrest, and let us do some preliminary engineering and geotech work so we can really define closely what the construction costs would be. We have our engineering firm. They're going to be looking at the construction costs based on the 2 lift alignments that are closest to each other. and hoping we can get some insight prior to the Assembly's meeting on next Monday on the 28th that'll refine those construction costs. They see this as being a really good fit for our terrain and our conversation that we've had, but that'll let us shape how much additional funding we'll need to do the installation and maybe develop some of these other activities. So some of the potential funding strategies to source that capital needed for the installation and the other strategies that we've started talking about would be potentially putting this on a 1% sales tax initiative. There's also the Assembly has the capacity to do a CBJ Central Treasury loan. So that'd be basically giving a loan to Eaglecrest that would be paid back over a 5-year period out of the reserve funds that CBJ has. So that's an option that's out there. That would have the lowest cost of capital, typically a 1 or 2% interest rate. Then the other potential vehicle for financing the rest of the installation could be a revenue bond. This would have a higher interest rate, higher cost of capital, might need a third-party backing to make that possible. But it could create some interesting opportunities to create ongoing capacity for future capital needs for our future infrastructure upgrades. We could also break out those repayment terms over a longer period of time. So this might create a faster schedule that we could then throw some money into a Tramigan replacement or other things like that. Quick little snapshot here on the financial modeling. This is based on having a suite of activities interplaying with each other, the mountain coaster and the gondola being the main attractions. So we've got a little spread here of different visitation numbers for the cruise visitation up here on the top. Looking at a model of 1 million cruise visitors, what does it look like with 1.35? And what does it look like with 1.5? Next line down is the percent capture rate. So this is an important metric, and we're using a 4% capture rate. And how we get to those numbers was looking back at the McDowell Group's exit visitor surveys prior to COVID-19. And during that period, they determined that 15% of our visitors do tram rides, 15% do nature hikes and walks, 1% are doing zip line, 1% are doing bike tours. So that tells us that 32% of our visitors are already wanting to do the activities that we would also be able to offer. And the other thing we need to acknowledge is at the 1.35 million visitors prior to COVID-19 and in 2019, all of our popular destinations were at capacity. The tram was at a huge capacity, big wait times at the bottom, big wait times at the top. The glacier was full and not giving new tour permits. So we're really at a saturation point with a lot of our primary high volume visitor experiences. And Eaglecrest has the capacity to have a high volume visitor experience. We have the big parking lots, we have the commercial water system, the commercial septic system, and a lot of area. And we've also intentfully designed our summer experiences. You see, most of them are isolated on the far west side of the mountain, intentfully programming our experiences that way, so we can retain a more quiet experience on the east side of the mountain. So once you walk past the base of Hooter and start enjoying your walk to the top of Tramigan, you're not gonna be able to feel the impact of the more commercial tour activities. So really trying to preserve that local experience as we're doing that. But to get back to the numbers, average visitor spending here is $60. That's comprised of gondola rides and food and souvenirs and a mountain coaster ride. In the independent traveler market, we've got a percentage there with a 15% capture rate, and also showing local visitation at a 10% capture rate. So when we look down here to the bottom, we see what does that look like in our scenario? And we've got our winter operations revenue here. So low projection, that number 1.76, that's reflective of our revenue on a more mild winter where snow isn't great. In this mid case level, these are our revenue numbers from last year. So those are real actual numbers on a good snow year. And potential high growth, that would be looking out in the horizon. After we've got the gondola running for some years, summer visitors see what we have, and they might want to come up and visit. So showing some growth in visitation. This year, we're expecting to land somewhere around the 2.2, 2.3 in total revenue. So that's a realistic number in the horizon view. As you'll see here, our annual CBJ financial support, we were at 850,000 in general fund support. That number is likely to be going up this year as we're having increased costs on insurance and other expenses. And so we can see here on the bottom line, Eaglecrest net income in the mid levels and the high potential levels. I've removed that annual CBJ financial support, and you can see there's still a lot of net income left at the end of the day. Still plenty to service a traditional debt instrument, even a higher interest rate one that would be a revenue bond. A 1% sales tax would be even easier for us to service in this type of financial model. Okay. Oop, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. Next steps. Where do we go from here? What does this all look like? So if we're able to secure the purchase of this lift through the assembly, then that will give us time to refine the final alignment for the gondola using the input, as I said, with the engineers and the geotechnical data and listening to our contractors. We've had some of the folks from CBJ Engineering looking at some of our cost estimates and helping us along there. They've got intimate knowledge from all the other projects they've done on the mountain. We'd also continue working with the Eaglecrest Summer Operations Task Force to evaluate the year-round operation plans based on alignment alternatives, including additional third-party verification of the financial models, as we've developed a lowercase financial model that we spent a lot of time on last night's task force meeting looking at. And then we also have our higher case financial model that I just finished talking about. So we can evaluate the spectrum in those models and how that impacts our debt service that we would need to bring this into full operations. Once we've distilled that down, then we're going to be in a position to look at our funding options and what debt mechanisms we might want to use and how we come up with the additional funds we need to become fully operational. Ideally, we get these tasks completed by July 1st. So if we wanted to contemplate a 1% sales tax funding solution, we would have time to craft that ballot language and have that ready to go for a ballot that would come to the voters in October. I guess at that point, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you guys can all see me. And the way I want to run this question and answer session here is if you can use the raise hand function on your screen, that should allow us to be able to see who is up, and we'll be able to give you access to be able to ask your questions. And we'll go through a little question and answer and get some additional comments. We'll give a few minutes and let some hands get raised, and we'll start running through.
Okay, we got one. Should we start?
Go ahead.
Okay.
And when you'll probably see something from our administrator that is going to show you that you'll have permission to speak. And when you do so, if you could just introduce yourself, give us your name, and try to keep your questions and comments to around 2 minutes if you can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sherry Williams, and this sounds really exciting to me. I wonder, why is this lift coming up for sale? Is there something wrong with it? Is it just does not meet their capacity anymore? Does it going to need a lot of repairs and maintenance, before it could become functional?
Yeah, a fantastic question, Sherry. So the mountain that's replacing this, they're replacing it with a much higher capacity gondola, and they've been having a lot of growth at their mountain as well. So they're looking to increase their uphill capacity is the main reason why they're replacing it. And then as we would move towards a reinstallation, there's a couple of key components and major moving parts that are much easier to refurbish before we install it. So the big things that we're going to be doing on our refurbishment before it would be installed is replacing the main bearings in the big bow wheels that return the cable, rebuilding the gearbox, rewinding the electrical motor, and then putting new digital control systems onto the lift. So those are big components that we can do easily before we reinstall it, which will give us a lot of good, strong running life out of the lift.
Okay, and it is an electrically powered unit then.
It is an electrically powered unit, exactly. And the engineers that we talked to today, the way the lift is currently designed is there's a drive motor at the top of the lift. They're looking to see if we can re-engineer it and put the drive motor at the base of the lift, which will allow us to easily hook into our grid power. If it has to stay at the top of the mountain, we may have to run on a generator for the first couple of years while we're generating the revenue we need to run grid power up the mountain, and then electrify Black Bear or electrify some of our snowmaking pumps and run new power to the Eagle's Nest, and then ultimately run power to the top of the mountain. Kim, I see you up on the screen. You should be clear to talk.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good, Kim. Go right ahead.
Hey, one thing that in reading all the material that's still unclear to me is how did you get to a gondola versus other types of uphill lifts? And that's question number one. The other one is I'm concerned about the environmental degradation up top of the mountain with trails and whatnot. It strikes me that hiking up at the Tram, that there's a lot of degradation of alpine habitat up there, and making it so it's hardened and whatnot is a very expensive operation. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions, Kim. Thanks so much. So what we've heard from all of the industry folks and actually from previous experience as well, we know how wet and cold and damp our environment can be. So we came to the gondola as being the most versatile, fully enclosed solution to keep people warm, dry, out of the wind, out of the misty rain as we're bringing them up to the top of the mountain. The other option would have been going with a tram. With the topography of this, the gondola is a little better suited because we've got a lot of undulations to the terrain. So gondola, you're going to have towers like you would on a chairlift. And it's just a better solution and easier to find used gondolas. Used trams don't come up on the market often at all. And then to speak to the trail issue, I've definitely heard other people talking about that, and that is a real concern. Our goal is to have intentfully designed, improved trails, which do cost, have a significant capital cost to them. But if we can create a good, defined, wide trail infrastructure, we're hoping that our visitors will be likely to stay on there just because it's an easier, drier place to walk and be able to keep that traffic a little more focused. Paul, can you hear us?
Who?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We got you, Paul. Go right ahead.
All right. I'm sorry I didn't get muted out earlier. So anyway, as people know that I'm former Eaglecrest ski area manager, and my concern that a top drive mechanism may not be the best fit for this location due to accessibility, including road access, power, and maintenance. Purchasing the retrofit and old lift isn't easy. I support you, Dave, approaching to bring new ideas and innovative strategies to the mountain. It's important to get it right, but I like what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. I really appreciate that. And yeah, part of the construction cost is us having a nice improved road to the top, which will make that maintenance much easier, and it'll give us good access in the winter to be able to get to the top and get the lift open for the day. But I was actually quite enthused to hear the engineers today speak about the possibilities of the drive being down at the base. That would be advantageous for a number of reasons. And one thing I didn't touch on that you brought to mind, Paul, is as this gondola is going to be at the top of the ridge, a lot of ski areas across the world, their high exposed terminals will all dock inside a building. So this gondola would offload inside a building. So at night we can close the doors to the building, keep the cabins free of snow and ice, and also create a lot of wind protection as the gondola cabins are cresting over the ridge and approaching and docking inside the building. The other things I've seen deployed that help with wind and ice is a wind deflection fencing, actually, that can help buffer crosswinds. And I've actually been communicating, close friends of mine, a lot of you diehard skiers are gonna know the ski resort named Le Grave in France. And they're actually one of the mountains that has a 7,000 vertical foot pulse gondola. It's in 2 different stages, but the top of their mountain is extremely exposed and they get a lot of wind. And they've been able to run their pulse gondola up to 60 knot crosswinds. So a lot of that's accomplished by ballasting down the cabins with water barrels and strategies like that. So, but getting some great feedback. Our friends over there have been going there for 30 years and know all the guys that have been running their pulse gondola for just that long. And they love the simplicity of this machine. So wanted to touch on those points that I forgot to mention earlier. Stuart, I can see you on my screen. Can you hear us?
I can. I didn't know I could be seen as well. I would like to reinforce what Paul said about ideas, whether it's a snowmaking and so forth. Kudos to you. I do have concerns that parallel those of Sherry and Kim, which I'm not sure were addressed. I hear about the retrofitting and trying to do a lot of upgrades prior to installing, but what is part accessibility after that? And also in terms of electricity going to the top, I hear Paul very well, and I'm trying to picture. I'm well aware. I was on a lift at Sun Valley yesterday. The new one that got put on there, is it called Broadway? I can't remember what it's called, but in any event, the realities of installing lifts and how much minimal intrusion there was phenomenal. It's amazing what they could do. I think it's a Doppelmayr lift, but I'm trying to imagine the base up at Parker's, where it goes. And I hear about the tourists being able to stay warm and dry, but that's so long as they're in the car. And I'm wondering where they're going to go along that ridge line, having been up there in the summer, where they're going to offload. I was a little flummoxed in seeing where there was a worry about having a quad chair and not having enough room to unload people the way we do it present with the Tramigan lift. So I'm wondering how we're going to unload all those people up top at Parker's. So that wasn't real facile. I apologize. I'm tired and not particularly well spoken, but yeah, for Sherry's points, parts and maintenance. And when will we know if it can be electrified from the bottom? Because if not, those years of going back to diesel power and a generator obviously are a concern. And then of course, the environment up top. It's one thing when Parker's is snow covered. I'm sure you've toured over the top there in the winter, and it has some room, but not Lebensraum by any stretch. And in the summer, a lot less so, or if you tour in the early winter. So sorry for the jumbled mouthfuls, but there you have it. Thank you.
No, thank you, Stuart. That's great. Yeah, and the preferred alignment that we've been working on at the top of Heavenly has great staging area, and that's part of what gravitated us to that alignment. It puts that mid station at a perfect spot at the Beacon Park, and there's a lot of great room at the top of that knoll there for a lodge and for people to spread out there. Parker's is certainly problematic. It would take a lot of extensive grading and blasting to be able to make that a suitable offload station. This gondola does have a much lower hourly capacity. Currently, it's moving around 600 passengers per hour. When we reconfigure it, we might be able to bring that up to 700 or 800 passengers an hour. The engineers are also evaluating whether or not we'd be able to add a 4th cabin to each pod. So we could potentially have 4 pods of 4 cabins, which could bring our hourly capacity up probably to 800-900 passengers per hour. Now, high-speed quad, you're pumping 3,000 passengers an hour. So huge difference scale and scope there of how many passengers you're dumping out. And I certainly hear the concerns on the trails. We'll certainly be taking that into all of our considerations as we continue on our planning. And I'm hoping we might get an answer from the engineers about having the motorroom at the base of the mountain potentially by Monday. So we're excited to be engaging with them. Very reputable company. Turns out that one of the gentlemen I was on the call with today came up and assisted Palma with the installation of the Mount Roberts tram. So they have some history working in Juneau. Hi, Deb, can you hear us?
I just have to unmute. Hey, I have a lot of questions. Some of them have already been addressed. I'm curious as to winter operations. Will there be, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Deb. Go right ahead, please.
My button came up. So I'm wondering about winter operations. What would be the restrictions for not having it operational due to winds or other extreme weather conditions that might be unforeseen?
Yeah, great question, Deb. So I was excited to actually get feedback from my friends that are over in the Grove riding their Pulse gondola, because I think that's a great case study. And depending on their wind direction, their range that makes them go on wind hold is 40 knots all the way up to 60 knots, depending on the direction of the wind and how the wind is pulsing. So right now, when we're putting Tramigan on wind hold, that's right in our range. Usually Tramigan will go on wind hold around 45 to 40 to 45 knots. Now, obviously on top of the ridge, we're going to have more wind exposure. And so that's where we really focus on the design of the top terminal and some wind protection fencing. Talking with some other folks that have experienced skiing in Japan a lot, really common in practice that they'll have that wind fencing installed as their gondolas or chairlifts are going in and turning around the bow wheel inside a small little building. So undoubtedly, it's going to be a much harsher environment than Ptarmigan's alignment is, but I still think we'll have a number of great potentials to ski off of this in the winter.
Hi, my name's Jenny Eckert, and this is really exciting, Dave. It's awesome. I'm really excited about it. My questions are one about avalanche control and what the ski patrol group thinks about this. Like, can we control this huge area? And how often would it be open? Because many times there's like great snow, but then it takes a day to open the ridge. So would we be able to actually get to the top in the winter? And then the other question has to do with capacity. You mentioned that the capacity here is roughly 600 people per hour. And in the summer operations plan, I note that you sort of aimed for a lift that would have much greater capacity, maybe like 3 times that. So is this really the right instrument right now for long-term sort of Eaglecrest planning?
Yeah, that's all very great questions. I'll start with the winter side. So with easier accessibility to the top of the ridge, I think it'll be much easier for the patrol to get up and start doing their avalanche control routes in West Bowl as it is. And we would be able to define Heavenly as a separate terrain pod. So as they go through their routes, they could do their control work in West Bowl and then move on over to the eastern portions of West Bowl and then be able to contemplate phasing in and doing control work in Heavenly Valley. And we've actually been having conversations over the last 2 years about how much cost it would take and what equipment we would need to be able to do avalanche control work in Heavenly Valley to bring that in bounds. We worry about how easily accessible it is and how many of our kids will rally out on the traverse into Heavenly, maybe without the right avalanche awareness or skills or tools with them. So in the financial modeling, I've built out for 6 additional full-time ski patrollers to help with that extra avalanche control work. along with some budgeting, some capital dollars for some specialty equipment to help with that avalanche control work. And either side of the lift alignment that's on the closer to Heavenly, we do see the ability to have 2 groomed trails that go down either side. So I think we can service a mix of ability levels from confident intermediates up to experts, and give a wide range of opportunities for different user groups or ability levels to ski off the top. So I think that'll be a good way to be pretty inclusive and just offer a different unique experience, a different character. And it's one of the beauties I see of a new lift, is wanting to have its own ambiance, its own experience, going through different trees and opening up a new enjoyment. On the capacity for the summertime, and the previous plans that we were looking at purchasing a brand new gondola. So typically a brand new gondola, a lot of times they'll have 2,800 to 3,000 passenger per hour capacity. So to bring the cost down on the brand new gondola, we were looking at only purchasing half the cabin. So we'd have 1,000 passengers per hour capacity. This lift having 600 passengers per hour capacity, if we look back at our high case visitor numbers, would be 550, a high of 600 visitors for the entire day. So we're still really well within our capacity window of being able to handle the visitor traffic that we would envision in kind of our best case scenario. So, and then in the winter case, from a capacity standpoint, since it's in addition to our other lifts, it's really going to spread people out more across the mountain and just add to our overall mountain capacity. So I think we would find ourselves in a situation where we could have a fair number of outside visitors coming in to visit us in the winter, supporting our small businesses and our visitor industry, and still have the mountain feel desolate, because we're spreading people out over a wider area. We're giving all the people that like to hike out to West Bowl, they're going to hike further. They're going to hike to Hogsback or to Stewart or do runs off the backside. We're just going to spread people out further across the mountain. Rolled, you should be able to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah, we got you, Rolled.
Good. Hi, Dave. Yeah, this is Roald Simonson. And I have kind of a comment and then a question. And the comment is, well, first off is, I think this is great. Just love it. Love the idea. It's exciting to think about. And, you know, I'd like you to be able to snap your fingers and just have it happen tomorrow, you know. I think about I've never done gondola skiing, but I kind of think about it. And I really do like the idea of it being enclosed, you know, not dealing with the weather. And that doesn't sound, I hope that doesn't sound wimpy, but I mean, I just think the world of inside the gondola, the sort of chatting and talking that can go on, the sort of friendliness that, I mean, it's just a real plus. And I would look forward to that. And, you know, and I do confess there's sometimes skiing where I stop at the prospect of another ride up, you know, Tramigan in the wind or whatever. That kind of ends my day, where otherwise I don't think it'd end with the gondola. And my question is, I mean, does Eaglecrest have some sort of reserve on this gondola, or is it? I mean, is it going to be snapped up by somebody else and this all goes away?
Yeah, great question. And I love your comments, Roald. And I agree that the social aspect of gathering and congregating in the gondola and riding up with 10 of your friends together and watching everybody ski from the gondola windows is going to be fantastic. And from a weather standpoint, let's face it, the last 5 weeks, I think we all would have liked loading at the mid station, going back up to the top where it's not raining as much. But to your point, we are vulnerable in this purchase. There is another buyer that's actively looking at it. The seller knows that we're that we have a complicated process to execute on this purchase, that we're not as nimble as a privately owned mountain. So they know our meeting schedule. We have a preferential rights on it. We haven't put any money down, obviously, but we don't have much additional time. So obviously it's the hope and wish of myself that the assembly members can hear the support for this and understand just the great opportunity that this is, and be willing to help us take this first step. Justin, go ahead.
Hey, Dave. I guess one of my questions is with putting a road in to support the installation of this, one of the road options I heard might kind of fragment West Bowl. And so I guess what's the plan to protect the view shed of, having Shot Rock Road or whatever the plan is going across the ridge, and also, just kind of keeping West Bowl intact and not fragmenting it?
Yeah, great question, Justin. So the plan I like best is any shot rock or rock work for road access for construction being just nestled off of the sunny side. And as you know, Parker's Ridge is really kind of pointed. And so we try to do a shot across the backside of Parker's. And so we could create a more level road that could be beneficial for traversing the ridge during the winter, but kind of nestling that on the sunny side. And then your view from the water looking up, hopefully the little bit of tree growth is there, could kind of buffer that view there. But I really want to leave that summer view shed of West Bowl intact and not do any blasting or road construction on the West Bowl side, and just wait and do that out of snow. So building a snow cat road or a traverse line to help us traverse and work our way back to Tramigan, and have kind of the heavier footprint of the actual road sitting more on the sunny side and coming up from Black Bear. Del, go ahead if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Del.
Okay, couple of questions. First, is Heavenly Valley within the ski area boundary?
So Heavenly Valley is within CBJ's land ownership. The CBJ property line comes basically right down the saddle between Heavenly and Hogsback is CBJ's property line. So it's in our property line, but not currently in our designated ski area boundaries, but it's within our land ownership.
Okay. On watching the videos of the gondola, when it's loading and unloading, the cars automatically slow down and move at a slower speed. I'm wondering, in the summer, when we're loading elderly tourists, can those cars be stopped so they can get in? Because I know riding gondolas in Whistler, you got to be on the ball, even though someone's taking your skis for you, because that thing's moving and you got to get in and get off. So I just wonder how it's going to work with these elderly skiers.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I thought I had one more question, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, chime back in once we get through the list and if you remember it. But that's a great question, Del. And I think, one of the big benefits in my mind to the gondola is the ADA accessibility. And when you look closely at the way the terminals are designed, the decking member is actually flush with the level of the gondola cabin. So you'll see they'll wheel carts in with food products to service their lodge at the top and things like that. So my point being, in the summer, if we have somebody in a wheelchair or a walker, we can easily just stop the lift and let them load that way. And then with the new control systems, we'll be able to adjust the line speed and adjust the speed that it goes at when it's pulsing. So if we find that the kind of factory setting speeds might be a little fast for pulsing, adding an extra minute and a half or 2 minutes to the ride time in the summer isn't going to be a big deal if we slow the speed down that it's set at to run through when it comes through the loading terminal. So I think we're going to have a couple different ways that we can address that. Once we see what the patterns are and see what the needs are, I think this can be really accommodating for those folks as well. Cindy and Dave, we got you. You can go ahead.
Okay, hi, David. I just wanted to ask a question about Tramigan, 2 questions. What do you envision as its projected lifespan, considering, continued routine maintenance of it? And can it, in its present form, be converted to a fixed 4-person chairlift using the existing towers? That's all I had.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Great question. Tramigan's a good, strong machine, and with putting the right capital dollars into it, rebuilding the gearboxes, we're already looking at doing some preventive maintenance on the planetary gear set. There's some of those big things that do have some significant costs, but in doing those, you really do extend the life quite a bit. So it's hard to say what's the actual lifespan. Well, it's how much money do we want to put into it to keep it running? I'd love to see us have a capital plan that we could see a replacement happen in 5 to 8 years is what I'd like to see happen. I think she's got more life in her than that, but I'd like to have that be one of our goals, is that in a 5 to 8 year lifespan time frame, we could see a replacement happen. And to your question, could we just convert it to a quad? The engineering strength of the cross arms wouldn't be able to support that extra weight. And then the structural engineering on the actual concrete footers wouldn't be stout enough either to support that additional weight on the line. So we would be looking at needing to have a completely new lift. But I think there's some fun, creative ideas of ways we can repurpose Tramigan for other uses and purposes going forward. So great questions, Dave. Thanks. Marcus, you can go ahead. We can't hear you yet, Marcus. If you can unmute, we'll see if we can get you in. Marcus, can you hear us?
You got me now, Dave?
Yeah, I got you now. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Couple of questions. How many visitor days are your projections based on? And then also, do you have contingency built into your numbers for inflation and fuel surcharges? Fuel costs have went up tremendously here recently, and I know that you're projecting $2 million to get this lift from Europe to here. Just wondering if that's built in there. And then my last question, I guess it's a question, but a little bit of a statement as well. So if the assembly votes to bring this lift over for $2 million, they're ultimately voting to install it for $7 to $9 million. And then what's the time frame for installation?
Yeah,
Because I guess they're not going to bring a lift over here and let it sit in the parking lot without installing it. So they're ultimately voting to install this thing.
yeah.
Thanks.
Super. Yeah, no, great questions, Marcus. So as we've been working with CBJ Engineering and they've been looking at our installation numbers, we've definitely been upping those contingency funds. And knowing that right now is a really difficult climate for any construction projects, as we all know, a lot of our bid packages for other municipal infrastructure improvements have come in way higher than originally anticipated. So we're really trying to buffer ourselves in as we kind of navigate this kind of really interesting climate right now. So we're trying to account for all of those unknowns and those increases in fuel surcharges. And I'm thrilled to have the engineering company that would likely do the reinstall having their stab at our numbers. We had great conversations today. So that'll help, again, give some more strength to our estimates for our installation costs. construction timelines, the way I envision the process going forward, if we can get this purchased and get it shipped here to Juneau this summer, busy weekends, we could use some more parking. So using our funds from CIP and our equipment staff, we could build some additional parking capacity above the upper lot, kind of down from the tubing cabin. And so that's where the lift could rest for the first winter. And that will give us time to do a lot of our pre-development work, to do extensive geotech analysis, really do all of our engineering work and make sure we're doing the upfront legwork. So we try to mitigate any surprises that might come along the way during installation. And then it gives us time to also look at what are our options for coming up with those funds for installation. That's a big amount of money. There's been some interest from the private sector in partnering on this. So there are avenues to get the funds we need to install this that doesn't involve CBJ general funds or 1% sales tax, even though those are options for us. So hopefully that answers your questions. Jeremy, looks like you're unmuted. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just have a question with regard to the funding. You talked about the 1% sales tax, which would go out to the voters. If that was disapproved, what would be the way forward for getting funding? Would that be where you look at the other two options, or would you have to look at, like you just mentioned, the private sector? Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic question, Jeremy. And I think we'll be doing a deep dive and really looking at what all of our options are. So if the decision is that we want to put this on the 1% project list to go to the voters, we'll have already done a lot of work on these other options, being a revenue bond or a public-private partnership or other avenues that are out there. And we know that there's interest in those avenues. So what I'm most interested in is the funding solution that keeps most of the value benefiting CBJ. That's my ultimate preference. And I think we've got a couple ways to do that. So long-winded way of saying, if the voters did turn it down, we'll have already been developing some other good alternative solutions that we could make a pretty quick pivot and hopefully have those funds also secured by the following May, when we'd be ready to go in and start digging holes and pouring concrete. Rick, go ahead.
Thanks. Hey, I wanted to first of all compliment you on your FAQ sheet that you put out there. You know, as I've talked to people, there were a lot of just misunderstandings about what it did and didn't do, and I found that extremely helpful, and I encourage everybody to take a look at it if you haven't. One question that I had, and you know, we hear about the wind hold on Tramigan. What percent of the ski year do we actually end up on wind hold, and would the Tram be similar, or would it be worse than Tramigan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rick. It'd be fun to, I'll have to pick Brian Davies' mind. He's the weather guru and has all the data. Top of my head, I'm thinking that we're maybe 5% of the days or under that we're wind hold on Tramigan. And the information I heard today actually gave me more promise, just hearing real life experience from a very wind exposed pulse gondola in France. So I would have hopes that with ballasting and weighting down the cabins with the water barrels inside the cabins is normal practice for trams. Mount Roberts does it all the time. With doing that, I would hope that maybe we could be on the same frequency as Tramigan, especially with the right designed top terminal. It wouldn't be unreasonable to expect that we're going to have a handful more wind hold days on this gondola than we would on Tramigan. But I would like to think that with taking the right engineering solutions during installation and these other operational things, that we could try to keep it, minimize those down days. Julie, we see you here. You can go ahead.
Hey Dave, how's it going?
Good, Julie.
Yeah, I'm curious which engineering firm you guys are speaking with, and a couple other questions. Marcus actually brings up an interesting point that if the assembly approves the purchase of this lift, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions of feasibility of actually installing it in one of the 3 locations that are outlined. If one of those surprises cannot be, or the ducks don't get in a row, if things aren't aligned, what happens to the equipment, and does it sit in the parking lot next to some other pieces of equipment that have been purchased and that just aren't being used and in repair? I didn't get up there last year, and I spent 10 years in Juneau and skied at Eaglecrest and worked up there for many years, but there's a lot of equipment that's used. Seemed like a really good idea and a really good buy, but they're not being utilized. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, great questions, Julie. So the engineering company that we're talking to is called SCJ Engineering. I believe their website is SCJ Alliance. So you can check them out. They've done a lot of they do just a myriad of lift installations, urban transport solutions. They're a really wide-ranging engineering firm. And then we are also in contact with Doppelmayr USA as well. So we've got some really great minds on this, and nobody sees anything that is insurmountable. But let's say some crazy thing happens and we don't find a pathway forward. This is a pretty unique lift. I think we'd be able to turn around and resale that lift to another buyer and recoup a good portion of our expense. Granted, we're going to be spending some money on engineering and freight costs. We know all about that coming in and out of Juneau, but we'd be looking to find a new home for it if we came up with a showstopper. But it's nice that we're already engaged with the engineers and they've looked at our topography. We've sent them our LiDAR imagery. And so everybody's been really optimistic. We also had the SE group that did our 2012 master plans. You're probably around during that era. So their main lift designer did an analysis of the equipment, had our high definition LiDAR mapping, and gave us a memo. You've probably had a chance to read that, linked on our summer page. So those are kind of my thoughts on those scenarios.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the shipping out of Alaska, if it had to be sold, is a huge cost that people looking at a lift, they might think it's, really great equipment, but to the price tag on shipping out would be a huge deterrent. I mean, we've had trouble getting rid of snowcats over the years because people say no thanks. It's hard to even give stuff away if you've got to put it on AML and get it down to the lower 48 or Canada.
Yeah, no, definitely valid points, Julie. I think there's our newest Alaskan ski area up north, Hatcher Pass. I think that this could be a good fit for them. I don't want to tip them off, so hopefully they're not listening in too close, but they're doing some pretty cool things up there at Hatcher Pass, building their little community ski area up there. So, but yeah, all of your points are very much anchored in reality. Go ahead, Deb.
I have a question if there's been a consideration of what type of sewage system would be used, and I assume there'd be quite a amount of human waste, and how would that be treated?
Yeah, that's a great question, Deb. So in our depends on our funding solution and what sort of building would be built at the top in the first stages of development. I have been working with Cox Environmental. We were pursuing some federal grants. So I've had Cox Environmental helping us with some of our permitting and environmental review of what the environmental impacts would be. So we'd be looking to them to help us design a good solution at the top. For the first year or two, we probably have, our little Clivus toilets at Eagle's Nest really do a good job. And so we probably start things out with a real basic solution like that, while we start maturing into our operations and look at a much higher capacity system for the Summit Lodge once we get to that point. Arden, go ahead.
Hey, great idea. Just some light questions here. Would I be able to take my dog up on the tram or on the gondola and my mountain bike? Maybe some hang gliding?
Great questions. I'll have to give the dog some thought. I definitely, we know we have a huge following of dog people. A funny story. We always, theorize how many people come to Eaglecrest in the summertime. And so during the COVID summer, of course, we had a lot of people coming to Eaglecrest, and our caretaker Pete had a hand counter and counted hikers, bikers, and dog walkers. And we had 210 hikers, 50 mountain bikers, and 60 dogs. So you just hit all the most popular activities. So to answer your question, in the early years, I think there's going to be some definite opportunity to bring mountain bikes on the gondola, depending on how our visitation goes, and if we're using the gondola to bring mountain coaster carts up. I think once we mature into this, we'd have a great opportunity to have plenty of revenue to be able to run Hooter Chair exclusively for mountain biking, so we can handle additional mountain bike demand and have its own little kind of pod of use there on Hooter. And yeah, I'll have to give the dogs on the gondola some thought, but we're definitely dog friendly mountain, as you know. Hi, Eric, go ahead.
Hi, my question is, what are you getting for this $2 million? It doesn't, well, does it have cabins, cable, towers? I mean, what specifically is in the package?
Yeah, great question, Eric. So it's a basically turnkey lift. You're getting the terminal structures, all the terminal steel, all the cabins, all the lift towers, all the shiv assemblies, all the terminal steel, the terminal decking. So it's basically, turnkey solution. Basically every nut, bolt, and washer that's coming off of that will make its way here.
So what you'll need to do is put concrete in and, more fancy stuff at the top and bottom.
Yeah, correct, Eric. So we'll have to do all the concrete work, concrete and rebar. And we really want these terminal enclosures, not necessarily large, but what we need is a building that the gondolas are going to dock or offload in. So at night, that's where the cabins will park. So at night when we're shut down, the cabins will be parked inside a building at the top. They'll be parked inside an enclosure building at the midway, and they'll be undercover at the base. So we will have to construct those enclosures or those buildings that'll go up and over the cabins and over the terminals. Hi, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for all the research you've done on all of this. I wholeheartedly support buying the gondola. People have talked about the winter usage. I want to talk about the summer usage and ask a question. I think a 600 person per hour capacity is plenty. Buses hold how many people? Maybe 50 or 60. And if you're going to have people taking tours, getting off buses and going on up there, I don't know if you want more than 600 people walking around. You're talking probably about a terrace or something along the lines of what the Mount Roberts tram has, where people sit down on the benches and take pictures and smile and then get back on the gondola and go back down to their buses. So I don't see a need when we're talking about extra capacity over 600 people an hour. That's, I would think, plenty up there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Pat. Yeah, and I really agree. That's a good capacity number. And with the ride time cycle, we would expect to see that pod of 3 cabins that can move 45 people coming through the terminal every 3.5 minutes. So you turn that around and okay, 45 people are on a bus. So you're moving a busload of people up the mountain every 3 or 4 minutes. So that's plenty of capacity for us to grow and mature and thrive into the future, and plenty for the early stages of what we plan, our planned user numbers. I'm not seeing any other hands on my screen right now. Does anybody else want to come back in for a follow-up or a second question? Stuart, we got you up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I caught on to that. I will try to be a little more succinct this time. A couple questions. I was playing catch up and reading during this presentation or Q&A. I heard you say that hoping to replace Tramigan in 5 to 8 years, and I'm curious with what? A new lift and what kind of capacity? And then if I'm reading correctly, a lot of this is predicated upon summer revenue. And with what's going on over in Hoona and what we already have with the tram, I'm wondering what those projections are and how much of this all is ultimately linchpinned upon that, and whether or not you actually have consulted to see if there can be some set agreements ahead of time, because the cruise industry can be rather fickle. And third thing, I heard you say turnkey, but in these costs, that doesn't address that it's presently top powered and what the cost would be to retrofit. So those are a few things I really haven't heard addressed. Oh, and along with what is the available on the market now for parts, if and when there are repairs needed. So I hope that was more succinct, and look forward to the answers. And again, thank you for your imagination and drive. Yeah, I look forward.
Super. Thanks, Stuart. I'll try to see if I can catch all your points. So Doppelmayr USA and Doppelmayr Austria still have great parts availability and sourcing for us. So they've both said that they can help us with ongoing support, ongoing tech support, parts support. So I don't anticipate that to be much of a problem. In regards to kind of linchpinning onto the summer season, you're correct. This model works because of our summer visitor industry. And I've been fortunate enough to build some great relationships with some new tour operators over the past 2 years that have extensive relationships and are interested in partnering and doing bundled packages with us. The tour industry shoreside reps are going to be hesitant to commit any actual visitor numbers. But from what we've heard, the industry is looking for more high volume visitor experiences because they are seeing so much demand right now. As we've heard, the ships that are currently scheduled to arrive in Juneau, if they were at full capacity, we'd be seeing 1.5 million visitors this summer. And so we need a place to disperse these visitors out so we don't create too much negative impact in any one destination. So I think we're a good destination for that. We're
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Dave, we can't hear you.
I was speaking and I could not hear. My audio just completely cut out when Dave Scanlan was talking.
Hannah, we can hear you. Scanlan, we cannot.
So should we give Mr. Scanlan a chance to get back in?
Dave, we can still not hear you. Scanlan.
So I actually had a couple of comments if you wanted me to go ahead while we're waiting for Mr. Scanlan to get back in.
Dave, Hannah, I think just give Dave and Nate a minute to reset what they're doing before we continue.
Alrighty.
Thanks.
Get my mic on.
I can hear you, Dave Scanlan.
Okay, everybody, we'll see if we've done a little tech change. Hopefully we still have a lot of you online. I see 36 people there. Mr. Hannah, can you hear us now?
I can. That sounds much better.
And I can hear you. Fantastic. Go right ahead.
So, yeah, obviously I probably don't have any questions because we've been so deeply involved in this whole process. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments though. And the main thing is, one thing I hope we can get the message out more clearly to folks is the fact that this is not just a summer tourism gondola. It's not just an alpine skier gondola. It's going to serve a whole bunch of the rest of the Juneau population. And we're not just talking about giving Nordic skiers an awesome place to be able to just grab their skis, get in a gondola, go up and enjoy some of the best Nordic skiing there is, and then take their skis off and safely ride back down to the gondola. It's going to give all these folks that don't ski at all a chance to get up on the mountain in the wintertime with the tubing park, or go snowshoeing up there when we're having a lousy winter down below. And in the summertime, it's going to have all these folks that live right here in Juneau that want to take grandma and grandpa or the little kids up to the top of the mountain, or go hiking over at Cropley. If we can have some tent platforms over there, they can go camping. I mean, it can give our local people the alpine experience that they might otherwise never enjoy. And I think that's a really big thing, because Eaglecrest is supposed to be for everybody. And this is one big step towards serving the rest of the Juneau population. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks so much for your comments, Ms. Hannah. Folks, bear with us, folks. We're just getting our text squared away so we can bring the next person over. Just a second, folks. We changed computer, so we're changing credentials, so I can have the ability to bring people over. Give me just 1 second. Okay, folks, bear with me. The connection should stay open. I'm going to log back in on another user. The connection should stay open. I appreciate your patience. Thank you. We're gonna try one more things, folks. Nate's logging into his other computer. We're gonna see if he can have access to move people over here. Give him just a second. I apologize for the tech problems. We'll see if we can get it going. I really want to get to the rest of the questions and comments here. Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, I think we figured out our tech. Lo and behold, see what happens when we don't have the clerks helping us run tech. Mateus, I believe you should be able to come off of mute and ask your question. Hang on a second. Okay, go ahead.
You guys got me?
I got you. Go right ahead.
All right, Dave. I was just kind of wondering what the projected lifespan of this used gondola is, and what are some alternative lift choices that you have thought about or have been brought up to use instead of gondola, or yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mateus. Great question. So with the refurbishments that we have planned to do before the reinstall, This is coming from the SE Group's opinion. We should have at least a good 20 years of service life before having to do some of the bigger, like annual ongoing repairs and maintenance. So that should give us a really good bulk of time. And I think we'll get a lot more life out of it than that. And we've priced out brand new gondolas, but really what we're looking for is the weatherproof enclosed cabin for the summertime ride experience. Even with a bubble chair, your feet and legs get wet, and it's not the same as being fully enclosed in an enclosed cabin. And that's why we're looking mostly at a gondola. And I really like the Pulse gondola as opposed to a traditional detachable gondola, because there's so many fewer moving parts. Detachable terminals have tons of power takeoff wheels and shiv assemblies that all require a lot of ongoing maintenance and rebuilding, in addition to all the detachable grip assemblies themselves. So it's a really simple machine with not very many moving parts. So it really, that's what has me most attracted about the Pulse gondola, is just the simplicity of the actual machinery.
So there hasn't been another lift choice that you've ran by or thought about?
We've certainly talked over a bunch of stuff as the board, but we keep coming back to needing that enclosed cabin.
Okay. And then another question about using electric power to run, like, why hasn't Black Bear been electrified so we don't have to run off of diesel? And is there an option for this gondola to run off of electricity, because we have a hydropower electric that is super eco-friendly and would be a great way to power those ski lifts or a gondola?
Yeah, great question. So I've worked with the engineers at AEL&P on cost estimates to run grid power to the top. And we're looking like $1.8 million price tag to run that grid power to the top. So it's a big price tag, and it's something that we're still in consideration. And that'll all come down to when we get to the point of looking at what our financing instrument is for installation, where we can contemplate, okay, do we have the financial capacity to do that right now? Or are we trying to keep this in a lower price tag scenario so we can get in the game and start generating revenue? At that point in time, we could fund that out of the revenue that we're generating. Obviously, that's where we want to go. You know, that's where we need to be. Then we can pick up the sourdough pump station, we can pick up Black Bear, we can run new power to the nest and run power to the top of the gondola. That's the slam dunk, right? That's where we all want to get to. It's just not sure when we're gonna factor that in, when that falls into the mix.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mateus. I'll allow it to talk. Okay, Rick, go ahead. We got you.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Just one question. We have the assembly meeting on February 28th. And is this the final assembly action to decide whether to purchase the gondola, or are we just another informational meeting at this point?
That's a fantastic question, Rick. It is currently scheduled for public hearing and for action on the 28th.
And is there, I'm assuming then you'll put out notices of that so that we're able to log into the assembly meeting.
Yeah, we'll make sure that everybody has those links and has all that information, and always open option to send your comments into the borough, and we'll have that link available as well. But the borough.assembly@juneau.org. I know they want to hear from everyone, so that it's always appreciated.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. a little slower on the draw here, controlling things. Go ahead, Gavin. You should be okay to speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Yeah, so my concerns are more focused on not this being possible, but what happens if it is possible. And a lot of the things that we love so much about Eaglecrest are there's not very many people, the side country, we go up there and it's not like the tram in the summer. I was just wondering what you think if we would lose that, or you think it'd be pretty similar, whether it's winter operations or summer operations, and what you think about all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great questions, Gavin. And obviously we all cherish that about the mountain. And, I really want to try to retain the mountain character and the mountaineering vibe and how we're building the trails and who we're attracting. And the big goal long-term is for us to have the financial capacity to have some additional acreage to spread people out across the mountain and create more accessibility. We've got a big community, and obviously the taxpayers make it possible for us to have such an amazing ski experience. So if we can lessen that burden on the taxpayers and still preserve what we know and love about the mountain, we still only do have 30,000 people here that can drive to Eaglecrest. You still have to really want to come here. So yeah, it's going to probably create some new attraction and some more people are going to want to come. But as we're able to have financial capacity to grow and spread our wings, I think we're going to be able to preserve that nice low density ski experience that we all love.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. We can't have everything, and we do need money to run this, place. And I appreciate you guys, putting so much into this, and that's about all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jesse. You should be able to come off mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. Go right ahead.
I'm very curious about high point placement. I've been hearing all this talk about Heavenly and Parker's, and I'm honestly not interested in any of those. I'd like to hear more about high point placement. I believe that if we offload people on top of the best terrain on the mountain, it'll create more work for ski patrol, and they do a good job as is, but throwing bombs on all the best terrain and offloading people on terrain they probably shouldn't be on top of anyways is not my idea. So I'd like to hear more about high point placement and is that still an option?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jesse. I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't touch much on that. So some of the dynamics and challenges with the high point placement is, and you'll be able to see if you look closer on our maps, and I can share more information, but as the alignment comes up and leaves top of logjam and starts going up through like Troller Glades and Bear Trap and Pipe Dreams and Tugboat, it will come right across like halfway down the pitch. So since there's such a steep double fall line and the trees are so tall there, we'd end up having to cut out like 100-foot wide swath of trees right through kind of that prime terrain. And then getting the construction equipment in there to dig the tower bases, we'd just be doing a huge disturbance on all of that great fall line terrain. And so that's going to bring the cost up, and I think it's going to compromise some of the terrain that we all love on a daily experience. So those are just some of the factors that stand out in High Point, some of the minuses. There's certainly some pluses, but the big thing that's going to have to drive our final location is the constructability and how that's going to impact the costs. If we fight against the terrain, we could see construction costs being doubled. So hopefully that kind of answers your questions and gives you some of the things that are going through our mind as we're looking at these different alignments.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Katie, you should be clear to talk. You're still on mute. If you could come off mute. I still have you on mute, Katie. I don't know if you can hear me. To come off of mute. We still can't hear you, Katie. We still have you on mute. I'm gonna try to jump down to Brian and then I'm gonna come back to you and we'll give you another shot. We'd love to hear from you. So I'm gonna just bounce to Brian real quick. Oh, I think maybe I got.
Sorry. You know what? I actually didn't have a question. I think what got confusing is when there was a technical difficulty, I had a little comment about that in the Q&A. So yeah, but I'm very much in support of this endeavor, and it's great to hear everyone's questions, and I think it's just really good to get the community as involved as possible in this. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Katie. We really appreciate the support. Brian, we've got you up. You should be clear to talk.
All right, you got me?
Yep, we got you. Go right ahead.
All right, my only question is a little bit about the revenue projections that are in the summer development plan. And aside from getting the capture of 4%, there's an estimate that the visitors would spend about $100 each. And I'm curious if that's with the entire summer development plan, like the ropes course and the zip line and the mountain coaster and all that, or if that's just the gondola. And what is the capture rate as well as the estimated spending on just the gondola?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to touch on that for everybody. So the summer development plan that Brian's referencing is the plan that we put together in 2019. And we had a lot of internal debate if we should remove that from the website. Conceptually, there's a lot of elements in there that are still valid, but those numbers, those capture rate numbers or those average visitor spending numbers, Brian, was if we had the full suite, the big zip line from the top and the ropes course and the mountain coaster and the trails, that was like a full adventure center ticket.
Okay.
In our current high case projections with the mountain coaster and the gondola, we're projecting an average visitor spending of $60. So that could be comprised of a couple different things: a $35 lift ticket, $5 on food, $5 on a souvenir, $15 on a mountain coaster. You know, can get you to that number. Now, some people are going to spend a lot more on food and not ride the mountain coaster, but that's kind of the breakdown that we get on that 60 average visitor spending of $60. And we have built out a lowercase model that has the average visitor spending at just $35, and that's just the gondola lift ticket. And that model contemplates us still having these other activities, but letting private partners do all the rest of the commerce. So that's another option. There's still some financial strength in that. I think what brings Eaglecrest and CBJ the most value is if Eaglecrest and CBJ own and operate the two big backbone pieces of infrastructure, being the gondola and the mountain coaster. And then building the other little ancillary activities around and offering the private sector opportunities to do the zipline tours or install a via ferrata or other creative opportunities to go along.
Can I ask just a quick follow-up?
Sure, go ahead.
And maybe I missed it, but does this $7.5 million doesn't include the mountain coaster, right?
As we drill down deeper into the construction costs, if we can keep on a tighter budget, not need our contingencies, there's a chance that 7.5 could include the mountain coaster. The cost of the mountain coaster itself is $1.5 million. So we would probably need to add some capital dollars. We want to be conservative with our estimate on the high side for our construction costs. And one scenario I see is we wait until we are done constructing the gondola to make sure we don't have any cost overruns, and then see what financial capacity we still have left to be able to do the mountain coaster with remaining funds, or have to go and secure a little bit of additional funds to make that happen.
And just, I'm sorry, one more financial question. So if that didn't happen, if for some reason you had to go secure more money and weren't able to, wouldn't that mean the estimated amount of money that each person would spend probably go down a little bit? I guess I'm just making sure that we've mitigated the risk of like not being able to afford to run the ski area.
Yeah, you bet. You know, there, once the gondola is in and operating, it opens up some other options for sourcing capital. And we know that there's certainly interest from the private sector in participating with that, but it would change the financial modeling. And that's why we're trying to build strong models around the different scenarios, especially at this stage, as we're really vetting our capacity for capital. Obviously, the ideal scenarios we find a financing mechanism that gives us enough upfront capital that we're sure that we can do both of those things right out of the gate.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Padre, you're clear to talk.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a quick question about how seasons pass prices would change if this gondola is built.
That's a fantastic question. Ideally, the goal of doing this is to create the ability to let summer pay for the winter. So ideally, it would be one thing that would allow us to keep pass prices in the same ballpark that they're in right now, and ideally do more youth programming. Just having a conversation with another skier who was just visiting a mountain, and all kids under 12 ski for free. And that's the stuff that warms my heart. It's like getting these kids on the mountain. That's our future. That's our pipeline. So if we can move in this direction and let our summer visitors generate the revenue we need to run the ski area, it just allows us to do more and keep the ski area really affordable going forward into the future.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul Swanson, I've got you back up. Did you have another question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Well, more of a comment. You back on the construction of the lift. You mentioned you were looking at being able to redesign it to be a bottom drive. I understand the dynamics of top and bottom drive, and if you're able to do the bottom drive, I think it would really be advantageous. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Nell, you still had your hand up. Did you have another comment or question that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha.
We've been talking about getting from the lodge to the top of the mountain, but I have some concerns of getting from the North Douglas Highway to Eaglecrest. That road is getting to be a horrendous obstacle course driving up there. And I'm wondering, you know, we add a whole bunch of buses going up and down there every day. That road is going to just fall apart. So are there any kind of plans of redoing the road to Eaglecrest?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I think your characterization is fairly accurate. We all know the road is far from stellar condition. So every year, a lot of you will know this, but some people might not, but every year we negotiate with DOT and we actually pay DOT $75,000 a year to have our road plowed on a priority 2 level. So as I've had those conversations, we've been talking about different ideas that they have to potentially do some upgrades to the road and different changing in who's managing and maintaining the road. So there's conversations to explore. They've all been very preliminary, but everybody knows that something needs to happen. So I think if this were to go forward, this might create a little extra leverage to see some action by DOT and see the road get the attention that we all know it needs.
Well, on the winter plowing now, isn't that a private contractor plowing or is that still DOT?
So it it changed. I think last year was our first year that they did bid it out to a private contractor, but we still contribute the same amount. So they're just lessening the load on their staff, and they've subbed it out to a contractor, but we're still contributing the same amount to help pay for the overall cost, whether it's DOT doing it or the contractor doing it. But they are the ones that are managing the contract with the contractor.
Okay, well, just a comment. I think the private contractor has done an excellent job this winter.
Here, here. We all agree, Dell, and I appreciate you bringing that up. We'll be sure to pass that along to the guy. We agree. They've been doing a fantastic job. Julie, I've got you back on.
Hey, I'm just curious, this meeting is being recorded, and when your audio turned you into an alien for a little while there, a lot of people I think might have been lost. It's hard to tell because we can't see who else is on the call, but you said 70 originally, and then it went down to about 30 at some point. So I'm curious if this recording is going to be available later. You've answered quite a few really awesome questions from the public, and I think it would be incredibly beneficial if it were posted to the ski area's website for folks to be able to review if that council meeting is ready for action on the 28th to make this big decision. I think it's really important for people to be able to, if they couldn't stay up late or if they were having to feed their kids, be able to listen to your answers to the questions from so many folks.
Thanks, Julie. That's our exact intent. We're going to try to get the link up tomorrow from the clerks and get that posted up on the website. Because you're exactly right. I knew this is the part I was looking forward to most, is this question and answer and being able to cover a lot of ground. And I know you guys can't see, but we still have 64 participants online. So some people might have fallen off with our little tech glitch here, but we still have a good attendance rolling. But we'll certainly post this so everybody can review the content and hear all the good questions and answers.
Thank you.
Thanks. Philip Mosier, I've got you over.
Hi, thank you. I know earlier in the year, there was a bit of change in Eaglecrest operations to update the pay structure and the pay schedule. I was wondering, part of that was, it seemed like there was a commitment to that this was going to be the base level and that there would be continuing updates in the amount of pay provided to employees up at Eaglecrest going into the future. Is that reflected in the expenditures and costs in this financial plan?
Yeah, that's a great question, Philip. So what's reflected in the financial plan is an additional 15% raise of the base level coming up in the fiscal year, starting in my fiscal year 23 wages that I have built out in the fiscal plan. And then we keep steady at that for 2 years as we're maturing, because that would be a total of a 23% raise in the floor. And then after 2025, we're doing cost of living increases every year for a bulk of the positions that I have forecasted. That would be like the year-round positions, including some of the food service staff and retail staff. But I did leave some staff in there that are more a rotating seasonal staff, which in our financial model are sitting up at like a step 4 or 5. And we know as they rotate out and people come in behind them, they're going to be coming in at a step 1. So it helps us forecast out our expenses, knowing that we're going to have the nature of our business. We have a lot of revolving seasonal staff, but the core staff that we have forecasted for full-time year-round benefits, they're getting cost of living every year after 25.
Okay, does that include for these positions? I know right now we're starting at minimum wage. Are those minimum wage positions or positions like that also part-time or full-time? I was looking up some recent calculations. The cost of living for Juneau would be about a little over $15 an hour to be able to kind of afford base level needs for like housing, food, that kind of thing. So with these positions, is that reflected in a full-time position or is that a part-time position? I know Eaglecrest is pretty far out of the way. I don't think a lot of workers would really have time to also maintain a second job, at least in the same day.
Yeah, again, great question. So it would be a mix of part-time and full-time. And we do have our, we call them our Eaglecrest limited positions, which are our, which can be full-time seasonal positions that don't have benefits associated with them. So the goal is to keep bumping those up. And in the financial modeling, we get those baselines. So we're sure nothing's below Alaska minimum wage, bringing up the wages evenly across all the pay classes. And then the hope is if we can do this, that we can really take a hard look. If we're generating the revenue that we think we can in the mid case and the high case, then we are going to have the potential to try to follow suit with what some of the other ski areas have done nationally that have raised their entry level wage to $15 an hour. So we're building in some increases, but we know if this matures and materializes the way we think it can, then we have the capacity to do a lot of those things. And the other thing we really love to do is to be able to have some staff housing options. That way, if somebody wants to come up and work for the winter season, we'd have some accommodations for them, because we get numerous requests every year, but to move to Juneau and find housing is very difficult. So if we could have a subsidized staff housing, and what a lot of ski resorts do that have staff housing is your housing cost is they use a percentage of your wage. So I think it's like a 30% of your wage is your housing cost. So this just opens up the potential for us to look at doing some of these things that have a lot of capital costs to get up and going, but would be really beneficial to the ski area and to making sure that we can secure the staff we need to run a more robust operation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, I've got you back up.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Not really a question. Well, maybe it is kind of a question, but it seems to me that the $7.5 million to get this gondola installed doesn't really include a lodge, correct?
Yeah, the 7.5, if we're giving ourselves healthy contingency costs, does not include much of a lodge. What we think we could do with the enclosure would be like a glass surround yurt for the summer. It's kind of popular in a lot of different ski areas, but we'd want to do something as an intermediary step before we can build an actual lodge there. But we know we need to have some sort of spot to keep people out of the elements at the top, especially for the summer season. A little less critical for the winter.
It seems like we're putting a lot of effort into getting folks up the hill without them being in the weather to put them into the weather. And it just seems, with all the ancillary things that are going to go along with the gondola, to kind of keep that going, that the aging infrastructure at Eaglecrest it seems like it'll be falling further down the priority list.
Yeah, yeah, you have great points, Justin, and we want to make sure that those things don't get bumped down the priority list. And if we can get the gondola secured, that's when we get to look at all of our different financing options. And there's some options out there that might allow us to have like a revolving line of credit. So once we're comfortable servicing some debt, we can have quicker access to capital to make some of these other improvements happen on a little faster time frame. So hopefully we get the chance to dig into that part of the whole matrix.
Okay. So Tramigan would be looking at a replacement 8 to 10 years down the road. Is that correct?
I'd love to see 5 to 8, but that's kind of ballpark. 5 to 8 is what I have in my mind.
Okay, so the chairlift would be roughly 55 to 60 years old when it's replaced then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Justin. I don't see any new hands up. Okay, I got Stuart up, and then Patty's going to be next in the queue. Go ahead, Stuart.
Sorry, Nate. Your answers were scrubbled out with the tech difficulties before. You just answered Justin about Ptarmigan, but I didn't hear what you hope to replace it with, or the projected cost if the bottom could be electrified, or it could be a power driven from the bottom. And then I love hearing about summer offsetting winter cost. So what is the minimum number? You seem to have done a great job with a variety of models to try to factor in all contingencies. So I was wondering what the bare minimum number of tourists before you can start actually driving profit. And thank you for all your time. I know you're volleying a lot of questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So our break-even point with our visitor days is sitting around like 360 visitors a day. Is like our break-even point where we're servicing all the needs and starting to come with some net profit at the end of the day. And as far as Ptarmigan replacement, I think a fixed grip quad makes the most sense for when we are wind hold, knowing that Ptarmigan alignment is the best sheltered alignment. It's the most protected from the wind, and it's going to be the most likely to run in our inclement weather. So I think having a fixed grip quad, adding a little extra capacity, and having the additional weight of the actual chair bales themselves being a quad is going to make them a little bit better in some of the high windy conditions. So hopefully that hits your questions there.
Other than the base electric projected cost, if that could happen, or sorry,
Yeah.
Retrofit for being base driven.
What's going to drive the retrofit for the base drive is going to be all of the mechanical forces and the vertical rise. It's a bunch of engineering calculations that the guys are getting started on right now. So hopefully we'll have that answer for you.
Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you. Patty, you should be clear to talk.
All right, you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Patty. Go ahead.
All right. So, you buy a house, you can put down a little bit of money, and that, holds the building for you while you try and sell yours or do this or that. And then if you don't follow through, you lose that money. Is there any way that, considering the fact that we are a city and we move slowly, is there some sort of hold payment that we could possibly make to the sellers that Eaglecrest could be okay with if we, didn't end up with this?
That is a fantastic question. There is the possibility that a 1/3 down payment could give us another month. A month from now, around April 1st, they're going to start dismantling it. So if our sale doesn't come through and the other buyer doesn't swing in that's interested in snatch it up, there's a chance that they'll just decommission it because they have their brand new lift coming and ready to be installed. So the window is pretty short, but I've been talking to these guys for a little while now, and they have said that a 1/3 deposit does secure it for us. So that's what we have potentially on the table. But since we're getting so close to that end deadline, I'm not sure how that would factor in.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan, I've got you up.
Oh, hey, I was wondering about the wind factor, and you had talked a little bit about bales of weight underneath the gondolas, but so I mean, typically we can get 70 mile an hour, 60, 70 mile an hour winds here or better. And I was wondering, do you house those gondolas in some kind of structure when it's windy like that? What do you do?
Yeah,
And also,
yeah, you're exactly right, Dan. They would be fully enclosed in that top terminal with doors that could close. So they, when we're on wind hold and not running, they'd be nice and protected and nestled in that top terminal.
now my understanding there's 12 cabins and they're big enough you could put your bikes in there and take them up, or no?
Yeah, they're pretty large cabins. You could actually fit multiple bikes in one cabin. So they're 15 passenger cabins. So actually the same size cabin as Big Sky's Lone Peak Tram. So they're pretty good sized cabins. And you're correct, there are 12 cabins on the line.
And so you're going to allow people to take their bikes up on them? I mean, is this a doable thing, or are you guys going to restrict that?
I think it's a very doable thing. It'll be interesting to watch our flow of traffic. And if we're going to have points in time on busy tour days where we might be restrained by some capacity, because not going to fit a ton of bikes and a ton of people in there. But for the first couple of years, I think we'll definitely be able to allow bikes on there. And then as we grow, it'd be nice to be able to have a hooter ready to service the mountain bike needs. And I see mountain biking similar to skiing. It's really kind of a local sport. And we want to let the more commercial summer activities make these local sports that much more possible. So I'm a passionate mountain biker. I love to do it. And I look forward to being able to build some more mountain bike trails and service that group of our Juneauites. And actually there's a really growing segment of travelers, of the destination mountain bike travelers now that are looking for great fun mountain bike experiences. So that'd be another market for independent travelers.
That's true. Hey, one more last question. So maybe I've missed it. I'm looking on the KINY site and for a spreadsheet or something, how you've come to the conclusion that we can pay this thing off in 5 years. I don't see that, but maybe I'm at the wrong location. Thanks for your memorandum. So I don't know.
Yeah, Dan. Yeah, thanks for that. I've been working really hard to refine those financial models and just finished cleaning up one of them. I'm trying to figure out how to get it in a format that we can publish it easy. So keep an eye on the website and we'll probably send out an email once we can get that linked up. But you should be able to expect to see that linked on the website in the next day or two.
Okay. Hey, thanks.
You bet. I still have some hands still raised from folks that have asked additional questions. I'm just going to cruise through real quick and see if you have a follow-up. Padraig, do you have a follow-up question? I'm gonna give just another second here and we'll see if we have any other hands raised. While I'm doing that, I just want to thank you all so much for joining in and asking some great questions. I knew we were going to cover a lot of really good ground, and this has been really enjoyable for me and a great opportunity. I guess at that, I'm not seeing any new hands coming up. Please feel free to email me, or you can, easiest email to probably use is the info@skieaglecrest.com. You can also email me directly, dave.scanlan@skieaglecrest.com. Send us over your questions if you have any more. Hopefully we'll have this recording posted up tomorrow. And as I said, we'll keep sending out email blasts. There's a lot this week, but we'll keep you in the loop as we get more information posted up on the website. And just thank everyone for all their great questions and look forward to having more conversations. Have a good night, everyone.